What if the biggest difference between those who succeed and those who struggle is not talent, luck, or education, but the way they think? Most people believe wealth begins with money. This book begins with a very different idea. It says wealth begins with thought, with a burning desire so clear and intense that it reshapes action, behavior, and persistence. And before we go further, if you want to upgrade your mindset and grow stronger with every timeless book, subscribe to the Book Day and become better than yesterday. This book, Think and Grow Rich, was written by Napoleon Hill, a man who spent more than 2 decades studying the most successful individuals of his time. He didn't study them casually. He interviewed them deeply. Industrialists, inventors, business leaders, people who built fortunes from nothing. Hill's goal was simple but ambitious: to discover the universal laws of success. What he found surprised him. Success was not random. It followed patterns. The same mental habits appeared again and again in people who achieved extraordinary results, and those habits had very little to do with intelligence or background. The book opens with a powerful principle: thoughts are things. This does not mean wishing creates wealth magically. Hill is very clear about that. What it means is that dominant thoughts shape beliefs, beliefs shape decisions, and decisions shape actions. Over time, actions shape results. If your thinking is weak, scattered, or full of doubt, your results will reflect that. Hill argues that most people fail not because they lack ability, but because they lack definite purpose. They want success, but they don't want it badly enough to commit fully. Their desire is vague, and vague desire produces vague effort. Every achievement, Hill says, begins with a burning desire, not hope, not interest, desire so strong that quitting feels impossible. He shares the story of people who failed repeatedly, faced rejection, and still continued, not because the path was easy, but because their desire was stronger than their fear. Persistence, Hill explains, is not a personality trait. It is fueled by belief. Another key idea introduced early is that faith is a state of mind. Faith is not blind belief. It is belief reinforced through repetition, focus, and emotional commitment. When you repeatedly feed your mind with the same goal, it begins to accept it as possible. And once the mind accepts something as possible, behavior changes. Hill also warns that the greatest enemy of success is not failure. It is fear: fear of criticism, fear of poverty, fear of failure, fear of rejection. These fears quietly shape decisions, pushing people toward safety instead of growth. This book is not promising instant riches. It is promising a transformation of mindset, a way of thinking that aligns effort, belief, and persistence in the same direction. Napoleon Hill places desire at the very beginning of his philosophy for a reason. Without desire, nothing else in this book works. Not planning, not persistence, not knowledge. Desire is the starting engine of all achievement. But Hill is careful to explain that desire is not wishful thinking. It is not hoping things will improve. True desire is specific, intense, and backed by commitment. Most people want success, but very few want it enough to reorganize their lives around it. Hill explains that people fail because their goals are vague. They say, "I want to be rich," without defining what rich means. They say, "I want success," without deciding what success looks like. Vague goals create weak action. To turn desire into power, Hill gives a clear process. First, decide exactly what you want, not someday, not approximately, exactly. Second, decide what you are willing to give in return. Every achievement has a price: time, effort, discipline, sacrifice. People who want rewards without cost rarely persist. Third, set a definite deadline. Desire without urgency fades. A deadline creates pressure, and pressure sharpens focus. Fourth, create a clear plan and begin immediately, whether you feel ready or not. Fifth, write all of this down and read it aloud every day. Hill believed repetition programs the subconscious mind. When an idea is repeated with emotion, it begins to influence behavior automatically. This process may sound simple, even uncomfortable. Many people resist it because it forces clarity. Clarity removes excuses. Hill also emphasizes that desire must be emotionally charged. When desire is weak, persistence disappears at the first obstacle. When desire is strong, obstacles become part of the journey instead of reasons to quit. One of the most important insights here is that desire fuels persistence. Persistence is not something you force. It naturally follows when you care deeply enough. When desire fades, effort fades with it. Hill gives examples of people who failed repeatedly before succeeding. Their breakthrough often came right after they were tempted to quit. The difference between those who succeeded and those who didn't was not luck. It was refusal to stop. This is why Hill famously says that many people quit one step away from success. They stop because discomfort feels like failure, when in reality it is often a sign of progress. Another key idea in this section is self-belief. Desire alone is not enough if it is constantly contradicted by doubt. This is where belief begins to matter. Desire plants the seed, belief waters it. Hill makes it clear that success begins inside before it shows outside. If your inner dialogue says, "This won't work," your actions will reflect that hesitation. Desire without belief creates internal conflict. After desire, Napoleon Hill moves to a concept that many people misunderstand: faith. When people hear this word, they often think of blind belief or wishful thinking. Hill means something far more practical and psychological. Faith in this book is belief strengthened through repetition and emotion. Hill explains that the mind accepts what it repeatedly hears, especially when those thoughts are charged with feeling. This is where autosuggestion comes in. Autosuggestion is the process of influencing your subconscious mind through deliberate repetition of ideas. Your subconscious mind does not argue, it does not analyze, it accepts whatever is impressed upon it consistently. Once an idea is accepted, it begins to influence behavior, habits, and perception without conscious effort. This is why negative self-talk is so destructive. When you repeatedly tell yourself that you're not good enough, not smart enough, or not capable, your subconscious accepts those ideas as facts. Your actions then quietly align with those beliefs. Hill's insight is that this process works both ways. If repeated negative thoughts can sabotage you, repeated positive and purposeful thoughts can strengthen you. Autosuggestion is not about lying to yourself. It's about choosing what you feed your mind. When you repeatedly read your written goal with emotion, you begin to see opportunities you previously ignored. Your confidence increases, your hesitation decreases, your behavior changes. Hill emphasizes that belief does not appear suddenly. It is built. Just like fear is learned, confidence is learned. Another key idea here is emotional intensity. Words without emotion have little effect, but words combined with feeling create impact. This is why reading your goal aloud with conviction matters. It's not the words alone, it's the emotional signal they send to the subconscious. Hill also explains that faith grows through action. When you take small steps toward your goal and see progress, belief strengthens naturally. Action and belief feed each other, one creates the other. This section also introduces a powerful warning. Your subconscious mind absorbs everything, not just what you intend, but what you constantly think about. Fear, doubt, anger, resentment. These emotions, when repeated, shape behavior just as strongly as positive ones. This is why Hill insists on mental discipline, not suppressing emotion, but directing attention, choosing what thoughts deserve repetition. Faith in Hill's philosophy is confidence backed by persistence. It's the quiet certainty that keeps you moving even when results are delayed. It's what allows you to act without needing constant reassurance. Most people wait for proof before believing. Hill teaches the opposite. Belief comes first, proof follows. This is not magical thinking. It's behavioral psychology. When belief changes, behavior changes. When behavior changes consistently, results change. The mind is the starting point of all achievement. What you repeatedly tell it becomes your reality. Napoleon Hill makes a bold claim that challenges the myth of the lone genius. He says that no great success is achieved alone. Behind every major achievement is what he calls a mastermind. A mastermind is the coordination of two or more minds working in harmony toward a common purpose. When people align their goals, ideas, and energy, something powerful happens. Intelligence multiplies, motivation strengthens, persistence becomes easier. Hill observed this pattern repeatedly while studying successful individuals. They surrounded themselves with people who challenged them, supported them, and expanded their thinking. Not yes men, not competitors, but collaborators. The idea here is simple but profound. One mind has limits. Multiple minds aligned toward the same goal create momentum far greater than individual effort. Hill explains that a mastermind works on both a practical and psychological level. Practically, you gain knowledge, feedback, and skills you don't have. Psychologically, you gain belief. When others believe in your goal, it becomes harder to doubt yourself. This is why isolation is dangerous. When you are alone with your doubts, they grow louder. When you share your vision with the right people, doubt loses power. Hill emphasizes that the mastermind must be intentional. It's not about surrounding yourself with anyone. It's about choosing people who share your values, respect your goals, bring strengths you lack, encourage growth, not comfort. Negative, cynical, or directionless people weaken desire and belief. Hill warns that your environment shapes your thinking more than you realize. If you spend time with people who complain, fear risk, or mock ambition, your mindset slowly adapts to theirs. This is why Hill says one of the most important decisions you'll ever make is who you allow influence over your mind. The mastermind also creates accountability. When others know your goals, quitting becomes harder, excuses feel weaker, commitment deepens. Hill believed that even historical figures who appeared solitary relied heavily on advisors, teams, and trusted partners. The image of solo success is a myth created after the fact. Behind the scenes, collaboration always exists. This principle applies beyond business. It applies to personal growth, creativity, learning, and discipline. When you align with people who are moving forward, forward movement becomes normal. Hill also makes an interesting point. A mastermind can exist not only with living people, but through ideas, books, and mentors whose thinking you study deeply. When you consistently expose your mind to high-level thinking, you begin to internalize it. The deeper lesson here is humility. Success is not about proving you can do everything alone. It's about recognizing where cooperation creates strength. Desire gives direction, faith builds confidence, but the mastermind multiplies power. If desire is the engine and belief is the fuel, then persistence is what keeps the journey going when the road gets hard. Napoleon Hill makes it clear that most people do not fail because their goals are impossible. They fail because they stop too soon. Persistence is the ability to keep moving forward despite delay, discomfort, criticism, and uncertainty. And according to Hill, this quality is far rarer than talent or intelligence. Most people start strong. They feel motivated at the beginning, but when progress slows, enthusiasm fades. When obstacles appear, doubt creeps in. And when results don't arrive quickly, quitting starts to feel reasonable. Hill explains that this moment is the most dangerous because it often appears right before success. Resistance increases when you are close to breakthrough. Fear gets louder, fatigue sets in, excuses become convincing. This is not a sign that you're failing. It is often a sign that you are testing your commitment. One of Hill's most important warnings is that lack of persistence has a cause. It usually comes from weak desire, low belief, or poor habits. People who quit easily often haven't fully decided what they want, or they haven't built the mental discipline to stay focused. Persistence is strengthened by a clear purpose. When you know exactly why you are doing something, temporary pain becomes tolerable. Without a strong why, even small obstacles feel overwhelming. Hill also links persistence to decision-making. People who hesitate constantly, change plans repeatedly, and seek endless opinions weaken their resolve. Decisiveness builds momentum. Indecision drains it. Another enemy of persistence is fear. Fear of criticism, fear of failure, fear of looking foolish. These fears often disguise themselves as being realistic. Hill argues that realism without vision becomes limitation. Those who persist learn to expect setbacks. They don't see obstacles as signals to stop. They see them as part of the process. This mindset transforms struggle into training. Hill also points out that persistence grows through habit. When you commit to daily action, even small action, you train your mind to continue despite mood. Over time, showing up becomes automatic. One of the most powerful ideas here is that persistence can be developed. It's not something you're born with, it's something you practice. Every time you continue instead of quit, you strengthen it. Hill believed that most people quit not because they must, but because they choose comfort over growth. Persistence is the willingness to stay uncomfortable long enough for change to occur. This section forces a simple but uncomfortable question. When things get difficult, do you look for reasons to continue or reasons to stop? As Think and Grow Rich reaches its conclusion, Napoleon Hill brings everything back to one central truth. Your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. Wealth, success, and achievement do not begin with money. They begin with the way you think, decide, and persist. This book is not really about becoming rich. It is about becoming mentally disciplined. Hill teaches that when desire is clear, belief is strong, thoughts are controlled, and persistence is practiced, results become almost inevitable. Not instantly, not magically, but logically over time. The people who succeed are not those who avoid fear. They are those who act despite it. Fear never disappears completely. What changes is your response to it. Instead of letting fear decide your limits, you let purpose guide your actions. One of the most powerful closing lessons is that failure is not the opposite of success. Giving up is. Failure is feedback. It shows you what didn't work, not who you are. Those who grow rich in any area of life learn to separate temporary defeat from permanent identity. Hill also emphasizes responsibility. No one else is responsible for your thoughts. No one else controls what you repeatedly focus on. You may not control every circumstance, but you always control your response. And that control, when used consistently, compounds into strength. This book asks you to take ownership of your mind, to choose your dominant thoughts, to feed belief instead of doubt, to build habits instead of waiting for motivation, to persist instead of retreat. Hill believed that most people live far below their potential because they never fully commit. They want success, but they keep an escape route open. True commitment removes the option to quit. When quitting is no longer an option, the mind begins to find solutions instead of excuses. Another important idea in the closing chapters is that riches are not only financial. Confidence, self-respect, clarity of purpose, and inner peace are forms of wealth that support every other success. Money without mindset collapses. Mindset without money eventually finds opportunity. The greatest takeaway from this book is not a technique. It is a decision. The decision to think deliberately instead of automatically, to act intentionally instead of emotionally, to persist long enough for effort to compound. When you change the way you think, you change what you notice. When you change what you notice, you change how you act. When you change how you act, your life changes direction. That is the real meaning of Think and Grow Rich. It is not a promise of easy success. It is an invitation to mental mastery. And for those willing to accept that invitation, growth is no longer a matter of chance. It becomes a matter of choice. This part of the book forces an honest question. Do you want your goals strongly enough to commit, persist, and pay the price?